Hey, well, it's a sunny Saturday morning, and I'm just out here enjoying the weather on our newly completed terrace patio. You may remember from the last video in this series that when we moved in here, the place wasn't completely finished yet. But that was about a year ago, and I'm happy to report that we've got everything wrapped up at this point. Issues have been addressed, finishing touches have been applied, and we've even got a little landscaping done. So in today's video, I'm looking forward to showing you how everything came together, what we got right about the design of our new house, and some of the things we might have done a little differently. You want a tour? We can probably manage that as well. And I'll get to all of these things in just a few minutes. But first, we've got a bag of rice to polish. For anyone joining me for the first time, I'm Jordan, aka Inside Outsider, and you're currently watching what just may be the final installment of my home construction adventure in Japan. It's been a heck of a ride so far, and I encourage you to check out the previous videos in this series if you haven't done so already. You may be wondering why I would be heading out to polish a bag of rice. Well, since I live in a rice growing area, I like to buy from the local farmers. And you get it with the husks still on. Which is why we have these rice polishing machines here and there. My nearest one is just a few minutes away. And that's where we're heading now. Before we head back in, let's take a look at what's changed outside. We had a yamaboshi tree in the yard of our old house. I moved it to safety before the demolition last year, and along with my family, it waited patiently at my wife's parents' place next door while the construction was going on. Anyway, it's time for Yamaboshi-kun to come home. Well, I think that looks really nice. Welcome home, little tree. In order to increase our floor space in the new place, we had to sacrifice the space around the outside of our house. This bit in particular is really narrow, so I decided to put a little deck back here to kind of open up this space and make it easier to walk through. For this, I enlisted the help of my father-in-law, who is considerably more experienced at woodworking than myself. We only had one free weekend to work on this, so we had to keep it simple and functional. For the base, we used the wall on one side and some concrete blocks on the other, on top of which we laid some long pieces of wood parallel to the house. Not even proper 2x4s or anything, just some wood that my father-in-law happened to have lying around. On top of that, we placed 2x4s for the top surface of the deck. The time-consuming part was measuring and cutting them all to just the right length, and getting the spacing right. Then we painted them, arranged them back in place, and fastened them down. And then just sit back and show the whole deck. And a little finishing with the power sander. And all done. Welcome to our house. If you watched the last video in the series, you'll remember that I wasn't very happy with the washer and dryer setup. So we asked the carpenter who built our house if he had any ideas. And he did. Stabler and less noisy than before, and a lot better looking too. And here's one of the many ingenious ideas my wife came up with. This laundry folding table comes out when you need it, and then you just collapse it back down against the wall when you're done. This is our family room, by the way. But we've set it up so that it can also function as a self-sufficient guest room. Most of the time, this is where we chill and watch videos in the evening. It turned out to be quite a good setup, since my kids' bedrooms are on the second floor, so we kind of have to be quiet up there at night. Usually, we leave this space open as a kind of multi-purpose entrance hall, in adjacent to the smaller, traditional Japanese genkan. But we can also divide it up when we want a little privacy, like when my wife and I are watching something we don't really want our kids to see. Well, let's head upstairs now. Welcome to our living dining room, the center of life in our house, and definitely the area where I spend the most time. The kitchen area was designed down to the last detail by my wife, and I personally really appreciate her efforts. It's just such an appealing space to be in, especially compared with the kitchen in our old place. Besides a functional kitchen, the features I especially wanted were big windows, a high ceiling, and patio access. We'll get to the patio in a little while. First, about the windows. One thing that was unexpectedly complicated here was installing curtains. Specifically, I really wanted to have the top and bottom sections separated so I could have one or the other covered depending on the time of day. Most of the time, I like to have it all uncovered so I can enjoy the view. In the evenings, we cover the bottom part for privacy, but typically leave the top windows open for airflow. I hadn't anticipated this being an issue, but when it came time to install curtains, I was told that my idea was too complicated and that I should just give up and put in normal curtains or blinds mounted at the top. The problem, it was explained, was that the window frame was made of a special insulating material, basically like a thermos, that couldn't be drilled into without compromising the insulating properties, and that this space was too wide to accommodate a side-mounted system, without ruining the aesthetic at least. But I persisted, And finally, an acceptable solution was found. And that's just about it for the finishing touches section of this video. I know, I said I would reflect a bit on some of our design choices, and admittedly I've only been talking about the positive points so far. It may just be that we're still in the honeymoon phase with this house, but we don't have any major regrets yet. Well, my kids do complain a bit about the lack of privacy and soundproofing for their bedrooms, which I don't personally consider to be a problem. But to be fair, there isn't really much feeling of separation between their rooms and the living dining room area. And that loft we put in that connects the rooms together doesn't really help the situation either. So I suppose we might have thought a little more about that when we were designing this part of the house. As for design choices we're happy with, I guess I've already pointed out quite a few. But as for things I haven't mentioned yet, putting in proper insulation and a central heating system would definitely make the list. Actually, the design of our central heating system is quite unique, and I'd like to tell you all about it. But that's a topic that really needs its own video. And finally, I'd like to show you what is probably the design feature that I'm most happy with, the patio. If you remember from the last video in this series, we designed this space to function as an extension of the kitchen living room area. The doors open up fully to make it like one big room, at least when the weather's good. But there were some particular design challenges. Specifically, it had to be able to handle the strong wind and heavy rain that we get every time a typhoon comes through, which is fairly often here in Japan. So it has to be sturdy, but can't have anything like a roof or high wall that might get torn down by the wind. And anything that might get blown away has to be easy to take inside. Also, the surface had to be completely waterproof with ample drainage, with the whole thing on a slight incline. So the floor started off looking like a pool deck. Not really the look I was going for. Well, let the patioization begin. Since it gets pretty hot out here in the summer, we added a canopy to provide shade and keep the floor tiles cool. Camping style. Admittedly, it takes a while to set up, but once we have it set up, there's really no reason to take it down. At least until the next big typhoon comes through. And guess what? Here it comes now. It looks like beer on the patio time will have to wait. Still no particularly strong wind or heavy rain. The typhoon is hitting southern Japan at the moment, and seems to be a big one. At this point, it looks like it will probably miss us, passing through the Japan Sea to the north. But I'm taking the usual precautions anyway, just in case, including a final check to make sure everything that's likely to get blown away has either been tied down or taken inside. It looks like everything is in order down here. As expected, the typhoon mostly missed us. The wind and rain were a bit noisy last night, but that was the extent of the damage. And now, everything gets put back where it came from. Well, I've finally found an appropriate time to chill out here with a beer. I've obviously got this home construction adventure thing mostly wrapped up. Well, I was thinking of doing one more video focusing on our unique central heating system. I was also thinking of doing a video or two about just what it's like living in small town Japan. And I also have some more brew pub visits on the horizon. What should I get started on first? If you have any feedback or requests, let me know. And hey, thanks for joining me over the last couple of days. Kanpai. This glass is from my recent trip to the Mino Beer Warehouse in Osaka. But in case anyone's wondering what I'm drinking now, it is not, in fact, from Mino Beer, unfortunately. Come on, I can't drink craft beer all the time.